What if caring too much is the very thing blocking your happiness? What if your constant need to control, to fix, to chase is the exact reason why things feel stuck, heavy, or just out of reach? You've been told to work harder, wanted more, never let go. But what if, just what if? The true secret isn't in holding on tighter, but in letting go completely. Neville Goddard, one of the most profound teachers of inner transformation, taught something few truly understand. The moment you stop needing your desire to come true is the moment it begins to manifest. He wasn't teaching apathy. He was revealing alignment, a quiet confidence in the unseen, a knowing that reality bends not when we force it, but when we align ourselves with the end we desire and then release it. In this video, you're going to discover a perspective that could permanently change how you approach your desires, your goals, even your inner peace. You'll learn why detachment is not the absence of care, but the presence of power. You'll see how caring less isn't laziness or indifference, it's mastery. And why those who are the happiest, the most fulfilled, and the most successful often seem like they care the least. But how? How can letting go, emotionally, mentally, bring you closer to what you want? Neville Goddard understood the subtle truth of the human mind. What you assume to be true, and persist in that assumption without needing validation from the world, becomes your reality. And when you truly believe something is yours, you don't obsess over it. You don't fear losing it. You don't keep checking if it's working. You relax. You smile. You walk in peace. That is detachment, not from the desire, but from the desperation. This video is not another surface-level motivational pep talk. This is a deep look into one of Neville's most overlooked yet transformative principles. We'll explore how detachment leads to happiness, how surrender leads to strength, and why letting go is the greatest evidence of faith. You'll hear real examples of this principle in action. People who stop trying so hard, people who dropped the emotional weight of needing it to happen, and then watched it unfold faster than ever. You'll hear about Neville's own experiences, his teachings that are often hidden beneath layers of misunderstood language. And you'll gain insight into a mindset that rewires how you relate to life itself. You'll learn what it really means to walk by faith and not by sight, why your current results don't matter, and how emotional indifference is not failure, but a form of spiritual confidence. You'll see how those who master the art of detachment radiate a kind of calm certainty that makes the world adjust around them. And if you've ever felt burned out by trying too hard, if you've ever exhausted yourself with affirmations, techniques, constant checking, and wondering why nothing seems to work, this video might give you the key you've been missing all along. Because Neville didn't say, chase the thing. He said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And once that feeling is firmly planted within you, all that's left is to live, not to chase, not to force, but to live freely, lightly, joyfully, knowing it is done. So if you're ready to free yourself from emotional pressure, if you're ready to discover why the less you care, the happier and more successful you become, then stay with us until the very end. There's a mindset shift coming, one that could simplify everything, one that could allow you to breathe again, to dream again, to create again, without resistance. You're about to uncover the silent power that lives behind surrender. This is Ignis Mindset, where we bring you Neville Goddard's most powerful teachings, refined, realigned, and revealed in a way that speaks directly to your growth, your clarity, and your purpose. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join a community of minds dedicated to inner mastery, mental freedom, and personal evolution. And now, let's step into the mindset that changes everything. Before we talk about the results we want to manifest or the goals we are chasing, we must first look at the state we are coming from. Neville Goddard taught that the outer world is nothing but a mirror reflecting the inner world. So, when we attempt to force changes in our reality, we are already contradicting the truth that everything originates from within. Reality does not respond to effort or obsession. It reflects identity. This is why detachment is not about disconnecting from your dreams, but about releasing the mental pressure that suggests you are separate from them. Neville often emphasized that the moment you truly assume something is yours, the desire loses its tension. There's no need to manipulate or struggle. There's no need to obsess. You enter a kind of quiet, confident knowing. This is detachment, not emotional coldness, but emotional clarity. When you fully embody the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you no longer need the world to prove it to you right now. You have already received it inwardly. And that's where the transformation begins. People often confuse caring less with being careless. But there is a powerful difference between caring with confidence and caring with anxiety. Caring with confidence says, "It is mine and I trust its unfolding. It is calm. It is rooted. It is still." But caring with anxiety says, "What if it doesn't happen? What if I'm doing it wrong?" That kind of care is not care at all. It is control wrapped in fear. Neville made it clear that your assumptions create your world. If you assume something to be true and walk in that truth emotionally and mentally, your world will eventually conform to it. But if you declare a desire and then constantly check, worry, analyze, and try to force it into being, you're revealing to your subconscious that you don't actually believe it's done. Obsession is simply doubt wearing the mask of effort. So what does it mean to truly let go? It doesn't mean you stop wanting the thing. It means you stop needing it to validate you. You stop needing to chase. You stop reacting to appearances. You enter a state of stillness where your assumption feels more real than what your eyes can see. Neville's phrase, "living in the end," is another way of saying detach from the outer and live from the inner. This is where true power begins. When you can observe your current circumstances and feel no emotional resistance, no fear, no doubt, no urgency, you are standing in alignment. Detachment is not distance from your desire. It is unity with your desire to the point where you no longer feel the lack of it. That's the paradox. The less you care in a needy, fearful way, the more room you give for the fulfillment to unfold naturally. Neville used the example of planting a seed. You do not dig it up every day to check if it's growing. You plant it, water it with your attention and feeling, and trust the process. The act of constantly checking the outer world is the same as digging up the seed. It delays the result. Detachment is planting the seed and walking away with the inner knowing that it is growing, even if you can't see it yet. This emotional discipline is what separates those who manifest with ease from those who struggle. The ones who see the fastest shifts are often the ones who stopped obsessing. They made peace with where they were, aligned themselves emotionally with where they were going, and then surrendered, not in weakness, but in strength. Neville also pointed out that life doesn't move by logic or timelines. It moves by states of consciousness. So if you want to change your outer world, stop trying to manipulate the sequence. Change your state, feel the end, then let go of the need to see how it will happen. The how is not your role. The alignment is obsession, worry, and control are signs that the mind is still stuck in separation, that it still believes something outside of it must change before peace can be felt. But peace comes first. Peace is the bridge. When you detach, you are no longer responding to appearances. You are creating them. This is the heart of Neville's work. The moment you say, "It is done," and truly believe it, there is nothing more to do but live from that truth. Every action from that point forward flows from alignment, not desperation. And this is when the most unexpected shifts begin to occur. What Neville called the bridge of incidents begins to unfold. The world reorganizes itself, not because you forced it to, but because your inner world shifted. That's the difference. When you care with anxiety, you chase, you wait, you fear. But when you care with confidence, you move, you trust, you live. One creates distance, the other creates alignment. It's not about caring less in your heart. It's about releasing the tension in your mind. The tension that says I'm not okay until it happens. Neville invites you to be okay now, to feel it real now. And when you do, you will find that the very thing you thought you needed so badly was already moving towards you. The moment you stop chasing. This is not passive. It's powerful. Detachment is the ultimate declaration of belief. And belief is the engine behind all manifestation. Not words, not effort, not desperation, just a quiet, consistent feeling that says it is done. So allow the world to take its time. Allow the bridge of incidents to form. You do not need to know every detail. Your job is to remain faithful to the inner state. Let go of checking. Let go of measuring. Let go of needing it to look a certain way. Reality follows your state, not your fear. And in that stillness, in that letting go, you will discover something incredible. You will realize that your happiness, your peace, your joy was never waiting on the outer world to change. It was always waiting on you to release resistance and align within. This is the essence of detachment. This is Neville Goddard's gift to you. When you enter the state of already having, everything changes. There is no desperation in that state, only calm certainty. You're no longer pleading or hoping or grasping. You are knowing. And in Neville Goddard's teachings, this inner knowing is the key that unlocks everything. The law of assumption tells us that what you assume to be true, if persisted in, will harden into fact. That means you don't wait for evidence to feel fulfilled. You feel fulfilled to create the evidence. Detachment is not indifference. It's not about giving up your desire. It's about dropping the emotional weight that comes from needing it to prove something to you. You stop clinging, stop watching the clock, stop rehearsing the lack, because in the moment you assume it is done, you are no longer trying to make it happen. You are resting in the truth that it is already yours. Neville taught that the world is yourself, pushed out. It's not responding to what you want. It's responding to who you are being. And the one who truly believes he already has what he desires walks, speaks, and feels very differently from the one who still thinks he needs to chase it. The one who knows doesn't beg. He doesn't worry. He doesn't wonder. He simply lives from the end. That's why detachment is so powerful. It's the emotional signature of belief. It says, I am already there. When you assume your desire is fulfilled, you're not trying to attract it. You're not looking for signs. You're not trying to manipulate outcomes. You've dropped all of that. Instead, you're embodying the state where the desire is already true. And in that state, your actions flow naturally. Your responses change, and life bends to match your new inner tone. Neville often said, your assumptions, if persisted in, will harden into fact. This means that the outer world is simply catching up to your dominant inner state. But persistence doesn't mean effort. It means faithfulness. It means returning daily, moment by moment, thought by thought, to the inner scene where your desire is already real. And once that assumption settles in, once it becomes your natural home, detachment becomes automatic. You don't need to fake it. You don't need to pretend you don't care. You truly stop needing because you've accepted it as done. And in that acceptance, there is peace. There is joy. There is lightness. That's the power of detachment. It signals to your subconscious mind that the assumption has already been accepted. And once your subconscious accepts it, life has no choice but to follow. The opposite of detachment is emotional clinging. And clinging always comes from fear. It says, if I don't focus on this constantly, it might slip away. But what you hold with fear, you push away. Neville emphasized this in many ways. The outer world reflects the feeling you carry, not the desire you speak. So when you carry fear, lack, and tension, you're creating from those states, not from the desire itself. You may want love, success, or freedom. But if the dominant state you live in is fear of not having it, that fear becomes your point of creation. And that's why detachment works. Not because it's some magical tool, but because it shifts your state. It tells the subconscious, I no longer need to panic. I trust. I have. And that trust opens the way for manifestation. Think of someone who is secure in themselves. They're not chasing approval, constantly checking their reflection, or second guessing every move. They move through life with ease. That ease is what attracts. That energy is what aligns. And the same is true for your desires. The more you can embody the feeling of I am already, the more effortlessly the outer world begins to mirror it. Neville's teachings make it clear. Life is not reacting to your effort. It's echoing your assumptions. If you assume lack, you experience lack. If you assume fulfillment, you experience fulfillment. And when that assumption is strong, the need to force or cling fades away. Detachment is not passive. It's not waiting. It's creative. It is an inner declaration that says, this is who I am now. And once you claim that identity, you don't wait for proof. You act from it. You think from it. You feel from it. And this inner activity is what changes everything, not outer effort, but inner conviction. That's why some people manifest with such speed. They don't dwell on the desire with tension. They step into the version of themselves who already has it. And they stay there, not just once, not just during a single visualization, but day after day, they return to that state until it becomes natural. And once it becomes natural, the outer world must conform. The universe is not outside of you, delivering packages to your door. Life flows through you, shaped by your assumptions. And detachment means you've reached the place where the assumption is no longer something you visit. It's where you live. You no longer entertain the old story. You no longer argue with circumstances. You've stepped out of the waiting room and into the role. Neville's method always brings you back to the same core. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and persist, not with force, not with anxiety, with faith, with calm, with detachment. Detachment is the evidence that the assumption has been accepted. And once it's accepted, the work is done. What's left is to live from it, to let life catch up to what you've already claimed within, to move through your days, not as the one who is hoping, but as the one who is already holding. That is the state that magnetizes. That is the posture of power, and it's available to anyone willing to let go of the old story and trust in the new. Clinging says, I hope. Detachment says, I know. One delays, the other delivers. So ask yourself, not what do I want, but who would I be if it were already mine? And once you find that state, dwell in it, return to it, make it your home. Because in the end, manifestation is not about getting, it's about becoming. And detachment is the sign that you've already made the shift. There are countless stories hidden in Neville Goddard's lectures, spoken softly yet carrying the weight of undeniable truth. Stories of people who saw their entire world change, not when they forced it, but when they finally let go. Not when they obsessed over details, but when they rested in the feeling that all was already well. Neville often spoke of a woman who desired a new home. She had imagined it clearly, the feel of the key in her hand, the sound of the door opening, the view from the window. She lived mentally in that space every night, but she didn't beg for it, nor did she keep checking how or when it would happen. She simply assumed it was done. Then she let it go, and what followed was not chance. It was a carefully orchestrated series of events, a bridge of incidents so natural that only those familiar with this teaching would recognize the miracle in motion. A friend of hers, seemingly out of nowhere, mentioned a house that was just about to go on the market. The price was unbelievably low. It was in the exact neighborhood she had imagined, and without pushing, without striving, without struggle, she found herself holding the very key she had once imagined. Neville described this not as magic, but as law, the law of consciousness unfolding exactly what the inner man had claimed. These stories don't come from effort. They come from inner peace. They arrive when the individual stops searching with desperation and starts walking with quiet confidence. It's not a passive state. It's a powerful alignment with truth. When someone knows it is done, they act differently. They feel differently. They speak with conviction. They stop asking for signs and start becoming the version of themselves that would naturally experience the desire. There was another account, a man who wanted a better position, one that would give him more influence and recognition. He applied for jobs, but nothing changed. He grew restless, anxious, impatient. Then he heard Neville speak on detachment. He learned to drop the anxiety, to live in the end, to rest in the knowledge that it was already so. Instead of constantly checking his emails or seeking updates, he did something radical. He acted as though he had already received the offer. He walked taller. He spoke more clearly. He started organizing his life as though he were already in the new role. And then, quietly, effortlessly, he received a call, not from one of the companies he applied to, but from a contact who had heard about an opening. The job was never publicly listed, and yet it matched his inner vision exactly. That is the power of detachment. It is not laziness, it is alignment. And when the inner man is aligned with the assumption of the wish fulfilled, the bridge of incidents begins to form. This bridge is not something we build by force. It is something revealed to us step by step as we persist in the inner conviction. Neville emphasized this bridge often. It's the invisible path that connects the current state to the assumed state. And it only becomes visible after the assumption is made real in consciousness. It never shows up while we are doubting. It doesn't form under the weight of stress and worry. It appears when we release the need to control and allow the law to function. And those who do this, those who release and rest, often find that their results come faster. Not because time has sped up, but because they are no longer standing in their own way. Stress, fear, and neediness are resistance. They slow the process. Peace and certainty are flow. They accelerate it. A woman once told Neville that she wanted to reunite with a man she loved. She had imagined the reunion so many times, but nothing seemed to move. Then she heard one of Neville's talks and realized she had been clinging emotionally, watching his social media, checking if he called, reacting to every little sign. She decided to change. She imagined the reunion one final time, filled with love and joy. Then she let it go. She focused on herself. She lived in the feeling that it had already happened, and she didn't waver. Within days, he contacted her, apologizing, expressing the very thoughts she had imagined. The stories are endless, and they all point to the same principle. When the desire is assumed as already true, and the mind is free from the tension of needing it to appear now, the path reveals itself. Life doesn't respond to desperation, it responds to identity. And when your identity shifts to match the desire moves toward you as naturally as a shadow follows the body. Neville's teachings strip away the noise. They go straight to the core. Stop forcing, stop pleading, stop waiting. Assume, live from the end. Let go. This is the rhythm of real manifestation. And those who live this way often speak of a strange calm, and knowing that cannot be explained. They stop needing others to believe in their dreams. They stop arguing with appearances. They start to enjoy the present moment, not because everything is perfect, but because they've already accepted the truth of the unseen. And that's the paradox. The less they chase, the faster things arrive. Not because they're doing less, but because they're doing the one thing that truly matters. They are being. They are resting in the state of the wish fulfilled. Even in Neville's own life, the stories show the same pattern. He wanted to return to Barbados during a time when he had no money for the trip, but he persisted in the assumption that he was already there. He imagined himself in Barbados, smelling the sea, feeling the warmth, and then a bridge appeared, a series of unlikely events that led to someone paying his passage. He didn't figure it out. He assumed it was done, and the path made itself known. These are not rare events. They are natural laws in motion, and anyone can use them. But only those who let go of control, who drop the anxiety, who refuse to argue with time, truly experience them. So the question becomes, can you rest in the end? Can you feel it as real and release the pressure? Can you stop needing it to come and start knowing it already has? This is not theory. This is the testimony of those who dared to live from the end, those who surrendered the how and chose to dwell in the already done. And in that choice, they discovered a strange truth. The less they cared about when and how, the more life cared about delivering exactly what they asked for. And it always arrived. Not late, not early, but exactly on time. Detachment, in the teachings of Neville Goddard, is one of the most powerful yet misunderstood aspects of manifestation. Many who first encounter the idea confuse it with apathy or indifference, believing that if they let go, they'll lose their chance. But detachment is not the end of desire, it is the purest form of trust in its fulfillment. It is not giving up, it is giving up control. The human mind has been conditioned to believe that effort and struggle are the only means by which outcomes are achieved. So when someone hears detach from the outcome, they instinctively assume it means not caring. But that's not what Neville taught. He emphasized over and over again that true creation does not come from stress, nor does it require us to wrestle with reality. It comes from the quiet confidence that what we have imagined is already so. One common myth is the belief that if I stop caring so much, I'll stop working for it. But that assumption arises from misunderstanding the origin of action. Action driven by anxiety is reactionary. It's the kind of emotion that comes from fear, from lack, from the desperate feeling that something must be done now or all will be lost. But action born from faith is different. It's calm, it's inspired. It flows without resistance. When you know something is already yours, your steps are no longer frantic. They are precise, peaceful, and powerful. Neville explained this with great clarity. Your inner state determines your outer experience. When you persist in the assumption that your desire is fulfilled, you align with the version of yourself who already has it. And from that alignment, action arises, not from pressure, but from peace. So to think that detachment makes you passive is false. In truth, detachment frees you to take the right kind of action, the kind that feels natural, joyful, and aligned. Another misunderstanding is the idea that letting go means you no longer want the thing. But letting go does not mean you've released your desire. It means you've released your need to manipulate the outcome. You've stopped trying to force the timing, the details, the path. You have shifted from wanting to knowing. Wanting keeps the desire out of reach. Knowing brings it close. Letting go is the moment the desire is no longer something you hope to have. It is something you already possess in imagination. Neville said, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. But assumption is not wishful thinking. It is an inner state. And when that state becomes natural to you, your outer world reflects it without resistance. But if you imagine the desire and then cling to it with anxiety, you interrupt the process. You're trying to drive the train from the passenger seat. You're trying to plant the seed and dig it up every hour to check if it's growing. That's where imagination and faith come in. These two, Neville said, form the creative power. Imagination alone is not enough. You can imagine the most beautiful scenes, the most fulfilling life, but if you doubt its reality, if you immediately question how or when, it loses its creative strength. Faith is what fuses imagination with reality. Faith is the unseen certainty, the quiet conviction that it is already done, even if nothing yet appears to have changed. This is why detachment is not indifference. It is deeper belief. It's easy to say you believe in something while still trying to control every step. True belief says it is done and moves on. True belief doesn't look back. It doesn't worry about timing. It doesn't panic when things appear unchanged. It rests in the knowing. Many people get stuck because they confuse detachment with disengagement. They stop visualizing, They stop affirming. They stop living in the end, all because they think letting go means doing nothing. But letting go doesn't mean abandoning the inner work. It means you stop worrying about the outer result. You continue to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, not because you're trying to make it happen, but because it's already who you are. Neville taught that everything begins in the imagination. That is the spiritual center of creation. What you imagine with feeling and what you persist in becomes your world. The physical follows the mental. So if your mind is full of effort, your world will reflect effort. If your mind is full of peace and fulfillment, your world will mirror that ease. Detachment is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. It's the sign that you've accepted the truth of your vision. You no longer need to beg. You no longer need to plead. You no longer speak as someone waiting. You speak as someone living. And in that space, creation becomes inevitable. Neville once said, "Be still and know that it is done." Stillness is not inaction. It is the absence of mental noise. It is clarity. It is a clean channel for the assumption to express itself in the physical world. Most people never arrive at this stillness because they're constantly checking for evidence. But faith requires no evidence. It moves first and the evidence follows. So when someone says, "If I detach, I'll stop working toward it," they are misunderstanding where the real work takes place. The work is in the mind. The work is in holding the assumption, living in the end, and resting in that identity until it becomes natural. From there, you will do things, but not to make it happen. You will do things because you are already the version of you who has it. This is the subtle difference that changes everything. If your actions come from the belief that you don't yet have it, you reinforce that state. But if your actions come from the belief that it's already yours, you accelerate its appearance. And so, the creative power is in the harmony of imagination and faith. It's not about how much you care or how much effort you show. It's about how much inner conviction you carry. Detachment is the sign of that conviction. It means you've placed the desire in the hands of law, and you trust that it cannot fail. Let the others chase. Let them worry. Let them scramble to make it happen. You have a better way. You've seen the deeper truth. You know that creation begins in stillness, is sustained by assumption, and is completed by the quiet trust that what you imagine is already true. And in that sacred trust, all things unfold in their perfect time. The process of detachment is not about ignoring your desires or pretending they don't matter. It's about moving in harmony with the laws of consciousness and allowing your inner world to lead. Neville Goddard laid out the framework for this, not as a rigid formula, but as a series of internal alignments. Each step carries the weight of deep psychological truth, truth that moves the individual from wishing to fulfillment, from craving to knowing. Step one is clarity. Before anything can be manifested, the mind must become focused. A scattered mind produces scattered results. You must know what it is that you want. Not in vague terms, not as a list of possibilities, but with certainty. Neville often emphasized that imagining creates reality, but imagination must have direction. Define your desire once, clearly. Write it down if you must, not to repeat it endlessly, but to settle it in your consciousness with finality. Once you've clarified the desire, let it stand as a completed intention. You don't need to redefine it. You don't need to keep questioning whether it's the right desire. Make it real in your mind, then leave it there, like a seed firmly planted in rich soil. Step two is the act of imagining its fulfillment. This is not just visualization. It is the embodiment of the experience. Neville taught that we must feel the wish fulfilled, not merely think about it. The scene you create in imagination should be short, focused, and emotionally rich. It could be a conversation, an embrace, a confirmation of success, whatever implies that your desire has already come to pass. The feeling is what matters. Feeling makes it alive. If you can feel it real, you are not hoping for it. You are living in it. The outer world might show no evidence yet, but within you have moved. Step 3 is to drop the desire mentally. This is the point most people struggle with. They imagine the scene, they feel it vividly, but then they continue desiring, they continue hoping, yearning, checking, waiting. This is where detachment must come in. Detachment doesn't mean you stop wanting it. It means you stop thinking of it as something you lack. You walk in the assumption that it is already yours. It is done. You don't revisit the desire with desperation. You don't dwell on what you don't yet see. You have claimed it. Now you walk in it. To drop the desire is to cease identifying with the self that lacks. Neville would say you must dare to assume you are what you want to be. Once assumed, let the old man, the old version of yourself who lacked, fall away. Do not entertain thoughts that argue against your assumption. If the feeling of lack creeps back in, return again to your inner world and rest in the fulfilled state. Not with striving, but with surrender. Step 4 is perhaps the most challenging. Refuse to react to outer reality as if it's more real than your inner state. The world will tempt you. It will present appearances that seem to contradict what you've imagined. But this is only a test of your inner stability. Outer reality is always lagging. It is the reflection, not the source. Your senses might say, it hasn't happened. But your assumption must say, it is done. You must not judge by appearances. This is the essence of spiritual maturity. Neville was clear, the world will mirror your internal state, but only after a period of persistence. That period may test you. You may face circumstances that seem to deny your desire. But if you remain unmoved, if you hold fast to the assumption of fulfillment, the outer must conform, not because of effort, but because of law. The law of assumption cannot fail unless it is interrupted by doubt. Reacting to the world as if it holds power over you is a sign that you've left your center. Your inner world must remain the only authority. Step 5 is to return daily to calmness, not craving. This is the maintenance of the state. The fulfilled state is one of peace. It is not frantic. It is not grasping. It does not beg. It does not seek signs. It rests. To return to calmness is to remind yourself who you are in imagination. It is not a chore. It is not a ritual for earning the desire. It is a gentle remembrance, a quiet homecoming. If you feel anxiety rising, if you find yourself doubting or questioning, go back within, not to redo the whole process, but to reaffirm your identity. Who are you in this moment? Are you the one who lacks or the one who has? Calmness is the signal that you've assumed correctly. Craving is the signal that you've returned to the old state. The goal is not to fight the cravings, but to observe them and gently shift. You do not need to wrestle with your doubts. You only need to step back into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Neville made it clear, it is not about how many times you visualize or how long you hold the scene. It is about how deeply you believe it. One short moment of true assumption can do more than hours of unfocused imagining. The power is in the feeling. The power is in the acceptance. Once you have accepted it as true within, the rest must unfold. Not because you force it, but because you've aligned with a higher law. Detachment is not passive. It is an active faith. It is the quiet boldness to live as though what you've imagined is already fact. It is the refusal to bow to fear. It is the discipline to remain centered when the world gives you every reason to doubt. These steps are not mechanical. They are deeply personal. They require honesty with yourself. You must notice where you are reacting, where you are clinging, where you are living in the past version of self. And you must choose again, always from within. Desire is sacred, but desperation is a distortion. When you desire something, you are glimpsing a possible self. When you assume it, you claim that self. Detachment is what allows the seed to grow. It says, I have done the inner work. Now I rest. This is the way Neville lived. This is the way he taught others to live. And for those who truly understand it, it becomes not just a method, but a way of being calm, assured, inwardly fulfilled, and quietly powerful. There is a kind of peace that arrives when you are no longer bound by the illusion that something outside of you must happen before you can be happy. This peace is not laziness. It is not disinterest. It is the subtle power of emotional freedom, of not needing. Neville Goddard taught that the secret to manifestation lies not in desire alone, but in the feeling that the desire is already fulfilled. The need dissolves, the anxiety fades, and in that space you find yourself already whole. Happiness, as most people understand it, is conditional. It is tied to an outcome, to a circumstance, to something that is not yet. I'll be happy when I get the job. I'll be at peace when I find love. I'll feel free when I have enough money. But all of that is illusion. The truth is, when you live from the state of the wish fulfilled, the happiness you were seeking is already present. You are not waiting for something to complete you. You are living from the inner knowing that you are complete now. Neville said, the moment you accept the wish is fulfilled, you feel a relief. That relief is the absence of striving. It is the emotional signal that you've stepped out of lack. No one relaxes when they feel they must still earn or chase something. But when you feel you already have it, the body softens, the mind quiets, and the heart opens. That is the emotional signature of detachment, not apathy, but calm confidence, not carelessness, but certainty. This is why detachment leads to emotional freedom. When you are not obsessed with the outcome, you are free to enjoy the present. You can appreciate the now without constantly measuring it against what's missing. This creates space, space for clarity, space for joy, space for the natural unfolding of your desires, without interference. The more tightly you cling, the more pressure you create. And pressure often repels the very thing you want. But the more you trust, the more easily things flow toward you, not because you are forcing them, but because you are no longer blocking them with emotional resistance. When people imagine letting go, they often think it means giving up. They fear that if they stop caring so much, they'll lose their ambition or their focus. But Neville's teachings show the opposite. When you let go emotionally, when you stop needing the thing, you actually enter into the right state to receive it. You no longer vibrate at desperation, you resonate with fulfillment. And fulfillment attracts likeness. Neville was clear. You do not manifest what you want. You manifest what you assume to be true. That truth doesn't live in your words or your surface thoughts. It lives in your feeling. And the feeling of truth is peaceful. You can't feel that something is true and still be anxious. If you're anxious, you're not yet in the assumption. You're in doubt. You're still looking at the world to convince you when the truth must begin within. Imagine for a moment how different life would feel if you no longer needed the thing you're waiting for. Not because you gave up, but because you assumed it already happened. You're not seeking evidence. You're not trying to control the process. You're living as the person who already received it. What would change? Likely you'd smile more. You'd breathe deeper. You'd enjoy the quiet moments. You'd have nothing to prove. This is not theory. It is spiritual science. It is the way consciousness creates. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and walk in it, the world eventually mirrors it back to you. The bridge of incidents will unfold. Circumstances will shift. People will move, but none of it needs your worry. None of it requires your desperation. The paradox is powerful. The less you care, the more you receive. Because in caring less, you're not rejecting the desire. You're honoring it. You're treating it as something already settled, already finished. You are not begging. You are not negotiating. You are simply living in alignment with the end result. And that kind of inner authority cannot be faked. People often ask, how do I stop caring so much? The answer is not to numb yourself or suppress desire. The answer is to move desire into assumption. Take it off the altar of wishful thinking and let it live in the heart as reality. Once you've done that, there's no more to do. Every action that follows will be inspired, not forced. Every movement will feel natural, not panicked. And the journey will feel like grace, not struggle. There is a stillness that comes from faith. Faith is not loud. It is not frantic. It does not need to be announced. Faith simply knows. Neville often said that imagination, coupled with faith, is the creative power, and that power needs no proof. It moves silently, powerfully, without doubt. The moment you stop searching for signs, signs appear. The moment you stop needing evidence, the evidence begins to show itself. This is the quiet power of detachment. No need to chase, no need to perform, no need to manipulate outcomes or question the path. You have seen the end in imagination, you have felt it, and that is enough. The world is catching up to your vision, not the other way around. In this state, emotional freedom is not just a benefit, it's the evidence that you're aligned. You are no longer tossed by waves of doubt or drawn into cycles of worry. You are anchored. You are free. And in that freedom, you can finally live. Not in the future, not someday, but now. This is what Neville meant when he said that the feeling of the wish fulfilled brings relief. That relief is not passivity, it is power. It means you are no longer a beggar to reality. You are its master. Through imagination and faith. You do not need to grasp, you do not need to push, you only need to persist inwardly in the assumption. Everything else flows from there. So you let go, not because you don't care, but because you've already claimed. You stop needing, not because you've stopped desiring, but because you've moved into the state where the desire is done. And from that state, you live, you walk, you act, you receive. That is the emotional freedom that detachment offers. That is the promise of Neville Goddard's teachings. And that is the path to peace that doesn't wait for tomorrow. It lives in your assumption today. If today's message sparked something within you, if it brought even a moment of clarity or calm, share your biggest takeaway in the comments below. What part of Neville's teaching on detachment resonated most with you? Your reflections might help someone else on their journey. Make sure to like this video if it brought value to your day, and subscribe to Ignis Mindset for more weekly deep dives into the timeless wisdom of Neville Goddard. We're here to help you understand, apply, and live these teachings in a grounded and powerful way. And if you know someone who could use emotional peace, confidence, or clarity, share this video with them. Sometimes one idea is all it takes to shift everything. Stay centered, stay calm, and remember, you don't need to chase what's already yours.